الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وخاتم رسله. أشهد أنه قد بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح للأمة فكشف الله به الغمة وجاهد في الله حق جهاده حتى تركنا على المحجة البيضاء على الطريقة الواضحة السمحاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك. فصلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وعلى أزواجه أمهات المؤمنين وعلى أصحابه الغر الميامين وعلى تابعيهم ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وما قل وكفى خير مما كثر وألهى وإنما توعدون لواقع وما أنتم بمعجزين. عباد الله، أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله ولزوم طاعته لقوله تعالى: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. My dear brothers in Islam, I remind you and I remind myself to have taqwa of Allah, to take heed of the wrath of disobeying Allah, for He is the one who said, O you who believe, have taqwa of Allah as much as is due for Him, and make sure that you do not die except in a state of complete submission. Today, inshallah, we will continue our journey in our subject matter titled Rooting Islam in Our Contemporary Life. And just to remind you, we said before that our mission, inshallah, is to reverse the free fall of the Muslim Ummah. We Muslims in the West have been given the resources to do this monumental task, and we will be responsible about it on the Day of Judgment. And we said in a previous khutbah that it is not that Islam is difficult to understand. Of course, we understand it very well. Allah would not have given us a religion that we would not understand. And it is not that Islam is very difficult to follow, because again, Allah would not have given us a deen that is difficult to follow. So then, what is the problem? And we defined the problem in a previous khutbah, that we fail to apply Islam into our contemporary life. Primarily because we don't understand contemporary life. For the past 500 years, contemporary life has been shaped by the new way of thinking that developed in Europe. You know, secularism and capitalism and democracy and all those and the scientific revolution, all those new ideas which we were the vanguard of during the early days of Islam, but unfortunately, because of several issues, including political despotism, the crisis that happened to the Mu'tazilites and the free thinkers, and the rise of the clergy in Islam, all those made us stop our forward progress, and the reign was given to others to move forward on acquired knowledge. But still, they are still having a crisis, because all they know is about this material world, but they don't know anything about the metaphysical world. And therefore, no matter how much material progress they are achieving, they still have this estrangement, and their like empty feeling inside, because they are losing the balance between the material progress and the spiritual well-being. So we Muslims, we can have both. So we just need to understand the contemporary world in order to apply, our tawheed to it. So let me, in this khutbah, just give you just two examples about how we lack good understanding of the reality on the ground. So one of them is the issue of interest and usury and riba, right? We said that Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu lamented that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he passed away, he did not exactly clarify what is riba. And this is a blessing of Allah. It is very good that, and this is one of the miracles of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, is that he was not like, giving opinion about everything, because you cannot encompass the whole subject matter of riba from a single point in history. The society where Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was living was basically a mercantile society, meaning people whom their business was like trading, right? So they used to run caravans from Yemen in the winter time to the Levant in the Mediterranean Sea, and basically they were trading in spices and frankincense, right? And then they will bring textile from north and take it to south to go ultimately to India, and on the Levant it ultimately goes to Europe. So in order to finance these caravans, each camel, they say, you have to like finance it with $50,000 of like today's dollar, because you have to buy the merchandise, and then you have to deliver it, and come back. And of course, many traders, they didn't have that much money. I mean, these caravans were like, hundreds of like camels. So they were like, we're talking big money, right? So of course, these traders didn't have that money. So what did they used to do? They used to go to people like Al-Abbas radiallahu anhu, the uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was known to be basically a banker at that time. Of course, there were no banks at that time, but he was a banker. He wanted to partake in this activity, trading activity, but he didn't want to like risk his money, right? So because going through these caravans, obviously there was risk, even though Quraysh was a very well respected and feared tribe, because they were, in charge of the sanctuary in Mecca, and all the Arab tribes would like fear them and respect them, but still, it was still, open to like hijacking, these caravans and losing, all your money. So those financiers like Al-Abbas radiallahu anhu, they and Abu Lahab, they used to finance these caravans, but without partaking in the trade itself. People who were doing the trading, like Khadija radiallahu anha and many others, they were doing the trading, but some of them, they were just doing the financing, right? Because they didn't want to take the risk. So they would say, okay, I'm gonna, lend you the money at a certain fixed interest. You make more money, you make less money, I don't care. Just give me my money. If you make more money, congratulations, good for you. If you lose on your trade, then you are the one who's gonna be left holding, the pot, and I'm just gonna like make my money either way. This practice, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited, and he said that this is in Islam, this is no longer allowed. This is riba, right? Now, move fast forward, like almost like 1,000 years. Now we are in the Renaissance time, and the idea of lending money on interest became fanciful, because the Europeans started to go around. They used to go to the normal trades, like through Arabia, because navigating through the Red Sea was very treacherous. But the Europeans were able to go around, the Cape of Good Hope in Africa all the way to India, and they bypassed the Muslim world. And this was one of the reasons why the Muslim world became weak and backwards, because they were financially depleted. And then, in order to finance their trades, they were financing it again with this interest-based money. And add to it the idea that was memorized in what Shakespeare wrote about the Merchant of Venice, about a Jewish financier who lent money to a trader, and when the trader was not able to pay him back, he demanded a pound of flesh. This was, like how in the pogroms, this is how they used to persecute Jews and label them as if they are money lenders and blood suckers and so on and so forth. I'm sure you all know this famous story, right? Now fast forward another 500 years. Now our whole system is based on interest. So there is this money that you and I trade, this cash. This only represents like 3% of the economy. 97% of the economy is basically like equity in like stocks and bonds, right? Which is like the vast amount of trading that is going on. Now put on top of that, all the interest. If you are running a company or a store and you are making, a profit of 10%, it makes perfect sense to you to go to a bank and borrow money at 5%, because the money that you are going to borrow at 5%, you're gonna be able to make 10% on it by trading in your own business. So you go back and pay the bank 5% and you keep the other 5%. This is called leverage. So the whole system is based on leverage. Everybody, even the biggest corporations that have lots and lots of money, like Apple, they still, they will have billions of dollars in cash, and they will still borrow money because they want to leverage, their money. And then finally, you have derivatives, right? So like future trades, like for example, I'm an airline company and I have to buy, gasoline like 6 months upfront, in the future. So I don't want to be subject to changes in prices. So I say, okay, so how much will I have to pay to guarantee that I'm gonna get, gasoline like 6 months from now? And there will be somebody who is willing to say, I guarantee that I'm gonna give you the gasoline at like a certain price. Now, if the time comes and the actual price is higher than the contracted price, then the airline company is very happy, right? Because if they would have bought at that time, they would have paid more, but vice versa. If the actual price at that time is lower than the contracted price, then the airline company lost. And about a year ago, one time in the futures, they were actually selling the oil at like minus money. They will give you the oil with money on top of it because the price was much lower than the contract price, and they have to deliver the merchandise. And then there is all kinds of other derivatives, So the whole system, is now based on riba. It was not possible, even if Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would have explained this to us, or the Quran has explained this to us, we would never have been able to understand this. So the matter is not the simple matter of the jurist who tell you, riba al-fadl and riba al-nasi'a, and if you if you are not taking advantage of the other party, and if both parties are making money, then it's allowed. It's much more complicated than that. It is so complicated that a 0.25%, 25 percentage points change in the interest rate when the Federal Reserve announces, countries go bankrupt, because the whole system is based on that. There is a very nice sort of a simple documentary, about half an hour, by Ray Dalio. He talks about this, and he called it, it's on YouTube, and he called it how the economic machine works. So if you are interested in this, it's very simple, and he made it in a caricature way for all of us, non-financial people, to understand it, and it shows you how this interest idea is making us more consuming, and also makes the economy goes into cycles of inflation, deflation, and every 70, 80 years there will be a major depression. So it's very interesting. Take a look at it if you have a chance. It's called How the Economic Machine Works. So this is an example of the riba. I will talk quickly about the second example in the second part of the khutbah. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فوز المستغفرين. استغفر الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين، والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين. The second part is a subject that is always very controversial, which is biologic evolution, where all creatures created by God, like the fish was created like a fish, and the rabbit was created like a rabbit, or they evolved from each other. The scientific accepted theory now says that there has been evolution, right? And this was known even before the days of Darwin. All that Darwin contributed, which was very aptly described in the title of his book, On the Origin of Species by Natural Selection. So he thought that the mechanism where evolution has been happening is natural selection, or survival, of the fittest. So I am not going to talk about the Muslim position about evolution, but I will talk about the another faith-based group, which is the Christian fundamentals. Back here in America, back in 1939, there was a very famous case, legal case, which was I don't recall who, against the not the Department of Education, but the Council of Education, Board of Education. It was the Board of Education, very famous court case, whether we should teach evolution in school or not. So I'm not going to say more about this. All that I'm going to say is that we, based on Tawheed, we believe that everything that came in the Quran and the Sunnah is true, and nothing in the Quran and the Sunnah is going to disagree or be proven to be scientifically incorrect, and this is a blessing that the book that is in our hands is true 100%. I mean, we have done a good service about Quran in terms of its linguistics, right? So we know all the Arabic grammar and all the sort of the poetic miracle about it, and that's all very true. But the Quran is a miracle in all aspects, scientific aspects, psychological aspects, economic aspects, in all aspects, and it is just a matter of us, making sure that, I gave you the principle. The principle is Tawheed. You start with Tawheed, right? And then you judge. The first example, which is riba, no, that is not allowed for the, and we have to think about the reasons why it is not allowed, right? So that's number one. Now, number two, if there is something else that we, are not taking advantage of, or we are not accepting, but we look back and we do not see that the Quran, disallows it or disagrees with it, then there is no reason for us to reject it. These were just like two examples, but of course we can go into more and more examples of why, our ummah is like stagnant, and backwards and so behind on our like acquired knowledge and material progress, and this material backwardness is putting us at a major disadvantage that is actually affecting our religion. اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا واهدنا واهد بنا واجعلنا سببا لمن اهتدى. اللهم اجعل جمعنا هذا جمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما ولا تجعل فينا ولا بيننا شقيا ولا محروما. اللهم لا تجعل لنا في هذا اليوم العظيم المبارك ذنبا الا غفرته ولا ميتا الا رحمته ولا مريضا الا شفيته ولا ضالا الا هديته ولا عائلا الا رميته ولا محروما الا نفست كربه ولا مديونا الا قضيت دينه ولا مهموما الا اذهبت همه ولا مجاهدا الا ايدته ولا مظلوما الا نصرته ولا مسافرا الا سالما غارما وقد رددته ولا حاجه من حوائج الدنيا لنا فيها خير ولك فيها رضا الا قضيتها ويسرتها برحمتك يا ارحم الراحمين. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الاحياء منهم والاموات انك سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات يا رب العالمين. عباد الله، ان الله يامر بالعدل والاحسان وايتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم